The first place is your influences, I think. My influences always inform how I write and the things that I hear. At the time, I'm influenced by a lot of different things now. The older you get, the more you become open. You're influenced by different things. So one composition I wrote was Divine Order. That one was inspired by McCoy Tyner.
I was at the University of Maryland in Baltimore. I happened to wander into a piano room and just, started fooling around, see what I could do. But it became quite a thing through the years. It just really involved showing up to gigs and getting instruction wherever I could get it from.
Several roads were open at that point. For some reason, I went into the jazz world, even though I was pretty inexperienced, and I listened to a lot of jazz. And I had a master's degree in classical music, so you would think I would just go that route. But no matter how well you play these pieces, you're not going to play any note that's not written on that page. And there's just something about that really irritated me.
Participated in at the White House. There was a series that Hillary Clinton sort of spearheaded called the Millennium Culture and Lecture Series. Various cultural speakers and musicians to come and talk about, the way that their culture sort of enhanced American culture. And the fourth such concert was honoring jazz music and how it sort of modeled democracy.
Presenting jazz in a way, help them realize just jazz is such a relevant art form. It's living, it's vital, it's accessible, it's fun. It's just awesome, and I want to do whatever I can to prevent it from being marginalized.
lived there for 18 years. And so I grew up bilingual. I grew up with two cultures, and I feel like a lot of my music, my approach to music, connects with that kind of bilingualism. I grew up studying classical music at the conservatory, but my grandfather was a jazz pianist on the West Coast, and I actually did my undergrad in physics in Scotland.
I was born here in New York City, but when I was a teenager, my dad got a job out in St. Louis, Missouri, so I went out there, and there was ragtime music out there, and also an excellent jazz program at our high school that got me kind of playing. And then I decided to come back to New York City and practice jazz music, and 30 years later, I haven't stopped. Was concerned that I was not showing the interest in continuing serious piano study that he thought I should, and that was what made him think, maybe this kid just is not a classical musician. Maybe some jazz lessons would be the thing. And there was a young guy on the University of Illinois faculty at that time named Tony Caramia. Short version is I got lessons with him, and that got me into jazz while I was in high school in Urbana, Illinois.
Japanese jazz pianist Makoto Ozone. His father was my first jazz piano teacher. He was a great teacher. I remember my first lesson was he played tenderly, like a whole thing from the beginning to the end, include like his solo and everything. I was like, wow. And then he said, you just learn this by ears. Don't write down. Just memorize and play as much as you can. Next time you come, just play this.
a track that I hold very near and dear to my heart. It's just sort of my homage to the disenfranchised in our society, the people that don't have all the advantages and circumstances that some more privileged people do. So it kind of incorporates, not only some intense, powerful lyrics, but the music and the band that I've assembled. We really created this sound that I think speaks to many different people.
But when we moved to Philadelphia, I got the opportunity to go to a new school, and I met this great music teacher. I wasn't really playing the piano, but I would mess around, and she said, "You got to go to GAMP." And I went to Girard Academic Music Program, and the rest is history. So without Philly, there's no way I would even be playing this music, I think. As much as I hate to say it, I'm your fault, Philly.
I started as a vocalist, actually, and pianist. As well, when I was 5, my mother was an opera singer and pianist as well. And my grandmother was also a vocalist and pianist. And since my grandmother was my babysitter, basically, she found this very effective way of having me interested in music. And since I was a very, say, observable child,
I happened to see Tommy Flanagan's Tavern on Green, but it just, hit my heart, and I felt, wow, that this is the music I want to, pursue my life.
You can stay on a chord for longer than if you're playing with other people, but on the other hand, it's all on you. So it's different. It's different. But my goal is to make people feel something.
doing some original music and some standards, and I want to get into also some free improvisation, just see where things go. But I really want to approach it kind of as relaxed as possible. As far as segueing, at least this is my plan. To segue into different songs in a seamless way, and just gives a real relaxed vibe.
Ultimately, we all want to kind of find our own voice and our style. But when you're surrounded with and you're playing with players who have such strong identities, it just naturally inspires you to dig deep, to express yourself, to put your identity out there, your individuality. You dig in and you have to deliver.
At night, I just go to clubs and check out shows and get to know people, just get to listen to the actual live jazz that's happening in New York. And then after all those shows, I just started going to jam sessions almost every night, basically, to small, Fat Cat, all those jam sessions, late night jam sessions.
Mm-hmm,
So I just went out every night, started learning tunes. I didn't know really any tunes.
I've just tried to do good work and be myself, and invariably, I'm lucky that people have come to me.
Absolutely.
I've never really hustled anything, but just through my work, people that enjoy it or find some purpose in it.
Early on, I kind of had a non-traditional start in music. It wasn't classical, it wasn't jazz. I was kind of playing old songs from the 20s and 30s and sheet music arrangements and polkas. Through the years, I eventually got classical lessons, started to get interested in jazz in high school and college, and through that period, I started listening to some of the more avant-garde jazz. At a certain point, I had become really struck by the music of Cecil Taylor. That kind of gave me a push in that direction, that you could kind of develop your own language, make your own music.
It wasn't until I was sort of in my teenage that I started kind of getting into trying to understand things a little more seriously.
Mm-hmm. And, then fast forwarding, I went to, York University in Toronto and studied with Oscar Peterson. And
Okay. Wow.
that was the sort of first point of entry. He was one of my teachers. I had some other teachers there, David Mott and John Gitt, fabulous, musicians, theorists and composers in the Toronto area that exposed me to a lot of, fundamentals.
Yeah, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and I was just blessed to have a great band director named Tom Beckwith in high school who really showed me the ropes. I was just playing saxophone to hang out with my friends and get out of some other classes or whatever, but he really took me aside and said, hey, here are some records. It seems like you might be interested in these, so he introduced me to Cannonball Adderley and Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane.
I heard the Catch Two and Concerto when I was maybe 14, 15. I tried to play bits of it when I was much younger, and I couldn't even go through it because I was quite young. And really that's what started it. The Concerto went well, and then he suggested that I should start looking at the Sonata, which is one of the pieces of Catch Two and I played at the Arts Club, and it really went on from there. I sort of fell in love with the Sonata and then realized that I'd like to explore the rest of his music.
My mom is a piano teacher, and I asked her one day, where can I find a cool harmony? And she gave me a Bill Evans record, and that drew me into jazz.
There was a piano in the house. I just gravitated towards the piano. I tended to play by ear, and then years later, I started piano lessons. I loved it, and then I grew up in the age before all the jazz education. So many people now have such a great head start with nice music programs in their schools. Definitely. This was not happening when I was coming up.
My dad being a biologist, I've been very interested in science since I was a kid, and I still am very interested in science. And so I got really fascinated with astrophysics when I was in my teens. I read A Brief History of Time, and I read The Elegant Universe, other books about astrophysics. And so I ended up getting a bachelor's in astrophysics from the University of Edinburgh. But I was really playing jazz all the time. I was gigging like 2 or 3 times a week.
I came up was with the jazz community in Manhattan. Very first, most influential, other than my mother and my father, who are both crazy influential in their own right. But aside from them, the very first one, man, when I was 16, I had the opportunity of meeting Roy Hargrove in the way, way back room of Smalls.
What's the meaning of Japanese musicians playing all the African music or jazz? And I'm trying to give some my answer to that and just put up some, one of the best Japanese musicians around the New York scene. And I try to create some music. And hopefully that translates to the all the people in the world. This is what Japanese musicians is capable of.
We decided on Mesro as a symbol for what we believe in, because he wrote that book, Really the Blues, and that's all about, first of all, jazz music, and also Chicago 20s, speakeasies, little basement clubs, that kind of thing. It also means he was one of the very, very integrationists and communality between all the races through music.
I, picked up the saxophone as part of the instrumental music program when I was 9. And the first time I ever played the tenor saxophone, I really fell in love. I think I was about 11. And I just thought, oh, this is my voice. This is my instrument. And from there, jazz was a natural extension of that love, and just kind of finding where I could express myself best.
I was enrolled in New School University. It's a jazz school in Manhattan. So that's where I really started to making friends, started jamming, and I met my mentor and my musical father, Reggie Walkman. Reggie took me under, like his wings, so I took all his ensemble, and he was the first one to invited me to his professional group.
When I was very young, my dad, he's a jazz musician in Tucson, Arizona, and he plays tenor saxophone. And so he got me started when I was very, very young, listening to McCoy Tyner and Bill Evans from the age of 2 years. I always grew up with a piano in the household, and honestly, I have to blame that on my dad. He gave me piano lessons from a very young age.
You want to be a professional working piano, you got to experience it all because we're needed in everything, But I've done hip hop gigs from sitting in, subbing in for Lauryn Hill and playing with T-Pain. Just several different artists that I've met over the years and just working with, whether it's we're in church and we're playing gospel music or we're the night before and we're playing R&B, just the whole spectrum of this beautiful black art form,
Years old, I was working with Mogo Santa Maria's son, Momito Santa Maria. I'd worked with Tito Puente. I'd worked with Celia Cruz, Machito, several different people, and a lot of the local, Latin bands at that time. And it was funny. I was working with one of the great percussionists in Latin. Had a sextet. I played with his big band, his octet, sextet, quartets. A guy named Kato.
When I was around 8 years old, my music teacher recommended me listening to jazz for composing. So my mother had me listen to big band music at home or on the way to the music school. And I loved swing, and I enjoyed it very much.
Architecture or the beauty that you see walking on the streets. When I go back to Italy, I'm much more amazed now, having come out of it and lived in very different places with a different lifestyle as well. So, but I think that, growing up inside this aesthetic can be a blessing and a curse.
I started out playing in church. 12 years old, there was this piano player that came to the church, and he was playing like all different styles of piano and organ. And I was like, man, how did you learn to play all of this stuff? And he said, you need to go to the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts and study music there. And I had never had a formal piano teacher before then. So I was like, okay, well, I'll audition. I auditioned on a gospel song, and they let me in. That was kind of like my introduction to jazz.
I was preparing for my audition to college in Korea. I was into the improvisation, and I also got exposed to some of the great recordings, Bill Evans and Oscar Peterson and Didi Bridgewater as well at the time. It's kind of random mixture, but that was the only recording that I could get in the small town in Korea at the time. And I was very fascinated about the sound and vibe of everything.
I was like a lot of young kids that was taking piano lessons, but when I started to hear the music, and it was, through listening to WRTI and a lot of live gigs in Philly, you could actually see people like Philly Joe Jones playing in clubs. I just sort of got drawn into that, and I started studying piano with Bernard Pfeiffer. And once I got under him, it was, he made me really work hard about music and really studying music and starting to try to go out and play.
Oh gosh, it was an ultimatum by the nuns at St. Athanasius in Evanston, Illinois, because my mother had actually taught me how to read at age 4. So the nun said, he knows how to read already. He's going to be bored and get into trouble. We don't want any troublemakers. You can have French lessons or piano lessons for $15 a week. My mother thought I had perfect taste, but it was just because I could read the record jacket that Tchaikovsky Concerto in B-flat minor. So she decided on piano lessons.
For my composition, I always like to write music, but always really
It's not just the ABA form. Want to write like a drama. Something happens next, and then it's unexpected thing happens, and I was looking for this little interesting, different elements, even like jazz.
Had some very turbulent emotional moments during the course of my life and career, and my emotions and my emotional needs led me to that kind of music that had lyrics that spoke to some of the inner turmoil that I was going through, but also had music that was designed to decapitate that kind of stuff.
Secretly, I loved listening to the radio show late at night, and then so then I discovered the music called jazz, and then I thought that was just wow, this is very interesting harmonic sound. One day I asked my music teacher at the high school that I would like to study jazz, and then she told me, "Oh no, you're gonna end it up as a drug addict."
They headed over to America, but they had a belief that they were finding political and religious freedom. We all know that, but the question rises immediately, why did they proceed to import 12 million Africans to be subjugated, to put it mildly, and furthermore to marginalize and ultimately destroy hundreds of indigenous nations?